Hi everyone, so in the casual Octopath Discord there are people making tier lists of the Octopath 2 skills for all of the jobs and characters, and I thought that sounded interesting and would make for a fun video, so that's what this will be about. I'm gonna rank every single one of the job skills and some of the specific ones like Concoct, which is specific to Casti, and we'll discuss them and such. If anyone has any of their own opinions, feel free to share it below if you agree or disagree or all that. But I hope that it's interesting to listen to. And this will also be kind of colored because I am a speedrunner and challenge runner, so I will have some different opinions than the casual player, I would say. I'm also not the most experienced at this game because there's still a lot that I don't understand in terms of like the game mechanics and such that I didn't delve super into, but I probably do know more than the average player at least. So we can just kind of get started, and this will be on general gameplay. So Precise Shot, this is a solid ability. It does multiple bow attacks. You get one extra hit over the regular attack, so it's not amazing, but it's still something, and anything that helps chip shields is always appreciated. This is comparable to Aggressive Slash or Elemental Barrage. We'll get to those in a little bit, but one thing that's nice about this is that the attacks are controlled, so like if for example there's 2 or 3 enemies, you could break all of them or target one specifically, whereas Aggressive Slash is more random. But because of that, it does have one less hit in its amount, but still solid. Not amazing, but not bad either, I would say. Thunderbird. Thunderbird is fine, probably in the same tier as Precise Shot. I rank Thunderbird and Icicle, Ember, Darkest Night all around the same tier-ish, around the same placement. We can actually just place those right now. So Ember, and let's see, Darkest Night, and what is it, Sleeping Gale? Yeah. And then Icicle, let's see, right here. All of these are kind of similar, where you're usually not going to be using this to do damage, and it's usually going to be used for coverage. For example, if an enemy has that elemental weakness and you just do that one attack on it and to chip that shield down, then that's the main usage. Very early game, it could be like okay for damage, but usually it'll fall off or so. Like, you know, there's definitely better options and things. Between these different elements and such, I would say that possibly Darkest Night is the best of these, because Scholar naturally has Fireball, Ice Wind, Lightning Bolt, and then Elemental Barrage. So those 3 elements you'll get more of throughout. And then Concoct has, well actually Concoct has Light, Dark, and Wind. So it would have all 3 of those. But at the very least, because you get more access to Fire, Ice, and Lightning, I think I value those maybe a little bit less. So I would probably value Wind a little higher. This Holy Light as well. Let me see where it is. Holy Light. Between, like, let's say Light and Dark, my opinion from my experiences, I believe that there's more enemies weak to Light than there are to Dark. So I do prefer having that Light element. So Light and then Dark, because they're more precious or like harder to get for damage. And then Wind, and then these 3. Between these 3, I would say that maybe because you start with Fireball and Ice Wind, these 2 are maybe valued very, very slightly less. And then I guess Icicle would be on the Apothecary, which is more physically inclined, but I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up. I could see anyone like just shifting these around, and we'll just keep this as it is for now. Alright, Cleaving Blow, this is fine. I honestly didn't use this a ton in my casual playthrough, and then I pretty much never use it in speedruns or anything. My issue with Cleaving Blow is that it's hard to know you usually won't know what passive you're going to get from an enemy. Like for example, if it's an elemental, you can kind of expect a rune out of it. Like if it's fire elemental, you'll usually get like, you know, fire rune. And then some attacks are thematic to the enemy. Like for example, if you use it on Trousseau, you would get Rehabilitate, I believe. So that's cool and good. But the issue is that you won't always know, and then because of that, it's hard to plan around and play around. And then in addition to that, the other issue is that sometimes you'll attack with this when the enemy is broken, then you'll get the buff, then you'll be able to use the buff, but you already attacked it and the enemy was already broken. So you would actually want the buff before doing the attack. So not great, but it's okay, and it's also a fun and interesting skill. Mercy Strike, I wouldn't put this in F tier, but I would put this low. So I think that Mercy Strike, the issue is that in this game, capture was buffed. So if you have 75% damage or higher, then you're gonna get 100% capture rate, and that's not that difficult to reach. In the first game, Hanet had more trouble capturing than Oshet, so this had more value, but in the second game, it's so much easier to capture, so it's less valuable. In addition to that, the other uses, like for example steal and collect, you can just boost those to get max capture, max percentage. So I can't see any other uses out of it, and then the fact that it takes a slot out of Hunter's toolkit really is unfortunate as well. Take aim, I would probably put it in. I'm debating because it's okay, but I don't know. I'll leave it here for now. It's a solid attack, mainly because it's an AOE buff that increases critical and accuracy. So the fact that it increases both of them is kind of nice, and the fact that it's AOE as well means that it affects the whole party. We'll get to it, but some of the defensive buffs kind of are not good. But if they had just made them AOE, it would have made them a lot more usable, and that was a good design choice that they made for Take Aim, at least. And the crit buff, of course, does help for damage, and the fact that we know the critical formula already, that helps as well, because it helps calculate exactly how much you need and whatnot. So solid skill. I wouldn't say it's amazing, but it's fine. I might bump it up, but we'll see. Okay, Leg Hold Trap is a very good skill. In the first game, it was probably the best debuff. In the second game, it's been power crept a little bit because we have Windy Refrain, Concoct, Stimulate, and Agnia's State Latent Stimulate. So all of those will push back the enemy in the same way that Leg Hold does, or it'll push you ahead. So because of that, oh, and also Springy Boots and stuff like that, and because of that, Leg Hold is not as good as in the first game, but it's still very good and will give you a lot of turns and stuff to break the enemy and kind of loop them, so always appreciated. Alright, I'm a challenge runner and a speed runner, so I use Abating Orb for its 1 HP gate removal, so some bosses will survive on 1 HP even if you do 1,000,000 damage, which in my opinion is terrible game design, but I digress. Abating Orb lets you skip that and lets you defeat enemies naturally, so that you know they will actually go down when you do 200, 300, 400,000 damage or something. So I really appreciate that, and I like the skill for it, and I think that it is a good skill for that. For its natural use of bosses buffing themselves and removing it, it's fine, but it can be situational, so that's a little harder to use. And keep in mind, this is something that's better used when you have knowledge. So someone like me who has played through the game a lot would probably get better use out of it than, say, a casual player playing for the first time. But still, like, a fine skill. I would say maybe below a Leg Hold Trap, though. I don't know, it's kind of hard to decide. They're useful in different ways. I'll put it here for now. Okay, Dryfendi's bow is unfortunately not very good, because by the time you're unlocking this, which I do like to try and take into account, you're basically unlocking other divines around the same time. And if you are, then Abers and Shinju Monjigiri, and well, that's not a divine, but I mean that's, you know, around post-game-ish, around the same time that you get them. Brands, Abers, that kind of stuff is all stronger than this. And even though this is multi-hit and will do an AoE attack, it's still just very weak compared to a lot of other skills. And also, you spent 5,000 JP, right? So that means that you could have maxed out a different job for all of its support skills. So I don't really like that. Definitely wish it scaled with at least something, right? Because the reason why Abers, for example, is so amazing is because it scales with speed. This doesn't scale with anything. Even like, say, in the first game, Last Stand, it scales with HP, so it made it stronger. Anything that scales in general is usually a little better. Unless, you know, it's something like the Star Seer Divine from last game, which scaled with BP and was just done very badly. But usually, you know, scaling is good. Alright, Indomitable Beast. This is Oshet's EX skill that she gets near the Trapuhopu region. Pretty solid, gives attack up and speed up. I forget how many turns, I think it's 3 turns. Even if it's 2 turns though, it's still very good because it's just a better Abide, better Lion Dance, Panther Dance. It's like all that combined into one. And so it's very good. It does fall off late game because she'll have access to Provoke Beasts, and that will be able to buff and debuff. But before then, for majority of the game, it's solid for DPS for Oshat. I guess maybe it loses a little value because she gets access to a lot of beasts that you might want the utility of, but as far as EXs go, it's fine. Probably in the middle of the EX pack or something. Our first S rank skill is Provoke Beasts. I saw that a lot of people in the casual Discord, when they were talking about it, ranked this really high, and I agree. This is pretty broken, especially if you use the glitch, but even without the glitch it will still be S tier because you break 6 to 12 shields, and then you can buff and debuff your whole party or all of the enemies at once. So that's so good, and then you can tailor the beast to whatever occasion or enemy you need. So it makes Oshat really powerful, and if you use the glitch you can do something like Devourer of Dreams, which will basically make your team invincible, right? So you just win outright. So it's really good. Alright, latents are an interesting thing because they because you get access to the latents super early, and because of that they're really powerful. This is probably better than Indomitable Beast though, and they do a lot of damage. So in general it's just really good early game DPS, and you keep it throughout the game. And unlike say Dryfendi's bow, you don't have to use any JP to unlock or anything. You get it early on, and if you need to unlock, you get it, charge it for a boss, you just use the in or something, so that's solid. For example, Dryfendi's bow would actually be really good if you got it like, you know, as a normal skill. That would be like super good. But because of the point you get it, it's not as good. But in contrast, Beastly Claws, it's not like an amazing skill, but it's pretty solid and good damage, especially for the early game, mid game, and then falls off a little late game and more so. But before that point, it's solid and good. By the way, Claws is the AoE one, and Fang is the single target one. So I rank Fang higher because most bosses are single. So you mainly want to use it for the bosses. I mean, it's good for random encounters too, but mainly for solo, singular bosses. Howl is a step above those two because it provides defense down for both physical defense and elemental defense. The E defense debuff is especially important because it's really difficult to get that. I believe there is a Hikari skill, at least one, if not like if 2 or more, that can do it. I think Dispiriting Arrow or something, I forget. But it's really useful to decrease the enemy's defense because then you do more damage. And then the shield chip is actually useful, especially if you don't want to proc any sort of counter. Like for example, Galdera's Souls have that counter if you don't attack their weakness. So this doesn't trigger that, and it chips their shields, so that's useful. Yeah, so it's better than these two. So I would actually put it a tier ahead, although not as good as the other stuff because it is a latent, so it's not like you can constantly spam it. First Aid is solid and good. I like it, and it's a good design choice over the first game. So the first game had First Aid and Vivify, which were the healing one and the reviving one for single target respectively, and they kind of just combined those two into this one. So it made it better because in the first game, Apothecary had some of its skills become redundant due to items. Like, why would you ever use Vivify if you have Olive of Life larges? You would just use the large olive, or you would use a Grape M to heal or something. But this one sorry. This one combines the two, so it combines the healing of First Aid and Vivify in one, and then also it's one of the starting skills of Apothecary, so you don't even have to put any JP into it, so it's really nice, especially early on, which you will have it for. So the fact that it saves olives is also pretty huge, because in this game it's actually harder to get olives. In the previous game, whenever you recruited a traveler, they would give you some grapes, plums, olives, money. In this game, they don't give you any of those, so it's more valuable. That healing is actually more important. Alright, Rehabilitate, solid skill. It can be situational depending on the boss, right? Because if the boss has 0 status effects, the skill is completely useless. But if it does have status effects, that protection to block future status elements is very useful. And then even if you didn't have that, just removing one of the statuses is also helpful. You know, stuff like Confusion, Unconscious, Sleep, all that stuff makes you lose turns, and that's huge value that you gain out of blocking that and like regaining your turn. So not amazing, but very good. So yeah, not much more to say. Sweeping Cleave is fine. I do like it. I used it casually, and then amongst the base 8 jobs, this is the only physical AoE DPS that you can spam, or not really DPS, but like move for like clearing random encounters and stuff. The thing is that it is power crept by other stuff, like for example Divine Dual Edge when you unlock, when you clear Hikari Chapter 3, or Changeable Catapult. Those are all better, and then also if you get a decent staff or elemental potency weapon, then the Fireball and Ice Wind as well will become stronger. So this is only good before then, but until then it's solid and fine, and having access to an AoE attack is nice. I was actually kind of surprised when I was analyzing like the skills and stuff for my, because I've been routing no sub jobs for the past few weeks now, and I took a break to practice for the marathon, but I was actually really surprised that the base 8 classes don't really have like a ton of AoEs that are, you know, good and solid, and this is kind of weak honestly, but it is like one of the few options. You know, you think of say Warrior, it has the piercing thrust and aggressive, and it doesn't really have like a good AoE, so it's fine though, it's helpful. And we can move on. Poison Axe, I put similar to these. It's a fine attack, does some damage, poisons, does axe. I don't honestly remember the damage of this relative to say Cleaving Blow, but I would say they're probably comparable. I'd have a little bit of utility and use for damage, and then not amazing, but it's okay. And it's inferior to other options like say Surprise Attack or, you know, Latent and other things, but it's okay. So we'll just leave it there. Replenished health, I'm honestly not a huge fan because Regen is never that strong, not that strong in this game. I do think it is above these two because it's not like completely useless, and there might be situations where you do want to heal your HP. The most like useful case is maybe say Lionheart Axe, where it's increasing your max HP, but you want to maintain peak performance, so having some sort of regen is helpful. It's just unfortunate to use a turn on it, you know? And if you do have that turn, there's just so many better options to be using that turn on. So I would say that anything in E tier and F tier, and you know, these bottom two tiers, you generally almost never click because there's always going to be some better option usually. Like rather than slowly healing HP, it might be better to just full heal HP with a Great Bem or something. And also like the immediacy of that heal, right? Because if a boss is about to do a heavy attack hit on you, you don't want to be healing really slowly with replenished health. You want to like toss a strong grape or something. So not great, but it's fine. Alright, our first F tier, weak to poison. This is such a gimmick move, and the design on it is so weird because you have to trigger poison and then it loses one shield, but then poison is kind of like difficult to put on. There's Poison Axe, and then nothing else in the 8 base jobs can do it. And I don't even think in the advanced jobs. I'm trying to think. Yeah, like the only thing I can think of is Poison Axe, and then some Hikari skills, and then some monsters that you can capture and stuff. But it's not easy to poison enemies. Poison bottles are only 40%, so it's just so annoying to use this, you know. And then what do? You remove some shields. That's, you know, not that big a deal. Just attack and trip the shields that way, you know. So yeah, pretty terrible. I mean, there's some cases where you might want to use it, right? For example, Jello Knife uses it in his solo Casti speedrun, and that was a use for it, right? But mostly it's gonna be a gimmick that you don't use. Alright, Doter's Charity is a solid ability. It enables a lot of combos and stuff. It is a divine, so you get it late game, whereas something say like Lego Trap, you get it throughout the whole game, so I would probably rate Lego Trap better, but Doter's is really nice for the combos it enables and stuff, and as far as divines go, it's pretty good. And especially, you know, late game for final bosses and such, very useful. Okay, so Drastic Measures is a little bit tricky to rank for me because, for one thing, it's Casti specific. So if you're using this, you're not using Concoct, and if you're not using Concoct, that's, well, not as efficient as you could be. But the thing is, Drastic Measures does do a ton of damage. Like, of the early game damage options, this is maybe the best. I'm trying to think of other stuff. I mean, like Latent and other stuff will be comparable. And then this also does really need Temenos, or it really wants Temenos at the very least for the Knight debuffs, for the power that gives. So because of that, it is a really, really useful and strong ability. I don't like certain aspects. So for example, if you want to have 2 DPSs, you want Cassie to go later in turn order, because if Cassie goes first, she will remove the debuffs, and then the next attacker will not do as much damage without the defense down or whatnot. So you really want this to be like the final attack that your character does, and usually it's better if Cassie's the only DPS. But Cassie is such a useful support, so it is a little bit unfortunate, but still solid ability. And also the fact that you really want Temenos limits it a little bit more too, in my opinion, because like putting on debuffs yourself is a little slow, especially if you're just gonna wipe them all right away. But it's alright. I might bump it down, honestly. It's hard to say. I'll leave it here for now. Remedy is solid. The issue is that it's random, but it does give you a ton of debuffs and buffs, and then some of the buffs can be really helpful and stuff. The thing is that it is super random, so it's not like reliable. Like I would rather know that I would be getting like 2 or 3 specific buffs, so I don't like that about this. And then also the fact that it's from Casty, so if you're using this, you're not using Concoct. As I mentioned before, Concoct is super good. Actually, we could just get into that, because this is actually relevant. Concoct is S tier, and I remember in the casual Discord, a lot of people agreed. If anyone has watched my level 1 runs of, say, Octopath 1 or Octopath 2, the fact that you get Concoct so early is tremendously helpful, and the stuff that it can do is just enormous. In the first game, Alphen was able to break every single element up to 3 times, so he's like a mini sorcerer. Cassie doesn't have that same amount of breaking ability, but she has so much other utility in different ways, putting enemies to sleep, extending their status elements, offensive Concoct, which is actually really powerful, especially if you boost with multiple wind or dark items, weapons or something. And then you have AoE BP to the whole team, which is super helpful. You can control turn order with Stimulate. There's so many different things, and it's just so good. So basically, if Cassie is using Remedy, she's not using Concoct, and Concoct is so good that you should be using it pretty much every single turn. This is also why Cassie functions really well without a sub-job, because this is all she does, just click Concoct, that's all you need. That's also why I do rate Drastic Measures a little bit lower. Early game is not as bad because you probably won't have as many ingredients for Concoct, unless you have her latent, in which case you can spam that. But before you get the ingredients, then clicking Drastic Measures makes more sense. When you get a ton of ingredients, then Concoct is just better. So S tier, super good. I would say Concoct is below Provoke Beast though, because this just breaks so many more shields and breaks the game in more ways. But I mean, Concoct is still super broken. So alright, Steal, and I will put Collect here too. What I liked about these two is that they give free information. So for example, you could just click this, hover over the enemy, check their percentage, do -5, and then you know what percent of HP damage they're at. And that's really helpful in case like you want to plan around a threshold. Most bosses power up at 25, 50, or 75%. So if you do this, then you can check their HP, and you'll know when they might change, and then you could know when you might want to burst or not. And that free action is really helpful, because then you can just do your main action, whatever it is. And then even without the free action, these are helpful. Like this Steal, you can steal Soul Stones or Pomegranates or Revitalizing Gems. Collect, you get a crap ton of money from certain bosses and things. Although you do have to know what boss it is, so that makes it a little bit more annoying. But you have to know which enemy has the item anyway, so that's also a little more annoying. Between these two, I also prefer that Steal is, yeah, actually, so Steal is in the first 2 slots of Thief, so you don't have to use any JP to unlock it. Collect does take JP, so I would prefer Steal because that comes innately, and you get it right away. And then if this had come naturally, like in Octopath 1, it's one of the starting 2 skills, then maybe it would be above. Although I'd probably still put Steal over. There's just more flexibility with this, whereas you can just grind for money, Whereas you can't necessarily grind for the item. Well, you can, but it's way more annoying for the drop rate. HP Thief is solid and good. Probably around here. I do consider it above, say, these other attacks. For one thing, it hits twice, and then it's also from the Thief class, which is stronger overall. But the fact that it hits twice means that 9999 cap, you can basically circumvent that and split the damage and hit almost 20,000. That's helpful. And also it chips 2 dagger shields, so that's helpful. And also heals HP along the way and does solid damage too. So overall, super useful ability and better than the other general damaging abilities because it adds utility as well. Surprise attack scales really well. I recall Chewy in the casual Discord mentioning that its modifier is comparable to Brand's if you go first. Weaker, especially if the enemy has good defense, but it's still comparable and pretty strong out of the starting kit of skills. And from my own experiments with this, because I was doing those sub jobs, routing and testing, and I use a lot of surprise attacks with Throne because there's some good swords available early. This does do really good damage and is very solid for just piling on early game damage. And the fact that it is only one skill, costs 30 JP if you get it initially, is super good. There are some quirks about this though I will mention. For example, if I believe Throne is first, or no, Throne is like the only person with a step ahead, then it only uses a 1x multiplier if I recall correctly, so that's also peculiar. And then if you're doing, say, a solo, I believe it's either 1 or 2 for the multiplier. Usually, if you go first it's 2 and then goes down very slightly per action that she goes down. It's like 1.8 or 1.75 or something for the second action, and then third action's like 1.6 or 1.5 or something. But this is still really good, even in spite of those quirks, and it does good damage. So very good skill. Swift step kind of sucks. It buffs Abers, but that's basically all it does, right? So, and also you move ahead in turn order, but if you doing it for turn order, you can also just defend. The fact that it reduces crit is okay, your chance of being crit is okay, but not super helpful because it's not like you're gonna memorize the critical value of the enemy and like know when you should use it or not. And then the Abers buff is okay, but it's inferior to Abide, and physical buff is better than this. So I mean, it's something, and it's not completely useless, but this is not good. Alright, Armor Corrosive is extremely good, especially in this game. Octopath 2's physical options are a lot better than in the first game. There's more options to boost your physical attack and more strong physical attacks to use. So the fact that Armor Corrosive increases that damage is extremely useful. I do actually put it above Leg Hold, whereas in the previous game I would not put it above Leg Hold. So amplifying that damage is huge, especially since a lot of the best DPSs in this game, like Lionheart and Shinju Monjigiri and Abers, are all physical like that. So it's very good. If there was a elemental defense debuff, it would probably also be A tier as well. Maybe B tier, but probably A tier. But there is none, so. Shackle is kind of like Armor Corrosive, super helpful, but mainly for surviving. I would do rank it below Armor Corrosive though, because while it is good, while it is good, it's better to be offensive. So this is more of a defensive thing to survive with, but it's still very good, especially if an enemy does a lot of damage. You can reduce it by 33%, so very strong, and helps you survive a lot of bosses that you normally wouldn't otherwise. Alright, I don't think Abers is broken, so my S tier is like for broken stuff, but this is the best divine for damage. Significant, by a significant margin. I mean, okay, if you don't have a ton of speed gear, Brands will be better, but it doesn't take a ton of speed for it to quickly match or surpass, and the fact that it's AoE as well makes it so much better. And there's not a ton to say. Most people agree that Abers is really good. It was good in the first game, good in the second. Overall very powerful. It's easy to stack speed because, I mean, what else are you going to use speed nuts for, like it's not reliable for much else, so just dump it on your Abers user. Alright, Veil of Darkness is comparable to Shackle. It blocks a physical attack completely, so I do prefer this over Shackle because, for example, Mugen does Terror with his attacks, or Trousseau does status effects with his attacks, or Vandalum does status effects like Unconscious and Fear with his attacks too, and this will completely block that and negate that, and it blocks, if an AoE one of those, so that's very useful. Shackle will do that same like reduction of damage, but you're still going to be hit by it, so if there's any statuses that come with it, you'll feel it. And also, just from my own testing, for example against the Blade, because I was doing some no sub job Scaldera testing, Veil of Darkness works so much better than Shackle. But I banned this in my run, so I banned all of the EX shrines, so it became so much worse when I switched over to Shackle Foe. So Veil of Darkness is just really good and very solid ability. I'm trying to think if like, yeah, I would probably rate this even lower, honestly, a little bit. Yeah, because Veil of Darkness is like the upper end of the good EX skills. Indomitable Beast would probably be middle of the pack or so. Disguise kind of ass, unfortunately. I really like Disguise and it's a lot of fun, and I will use it in the no sub jobs run I mentioned, but otherwise I've pretty much never used it. The issue with Disguise is that it's on Throne, so if you use this, Throne no longer gets her latent, and Throne has the strongest latent in the entire game by far. The fact that you get an extra turn, especially if the enemy is broken, you get an extra damage to pile on the damage, so it's just huge, and losing that is just so bad. There's some cases where you might want a certain armor setup or weapon setup, and then you could disguise to copy that, but you don't copy the accessories, and some of the accessories, like say Alpione's Amulet and Finisher's Claws and stuff, they give a huge buff to attack, so that really sucks. And then you also don't copy any of the support skills, so if you don't have deal more damage on Throne, then copying an attacker won't do very much. And then you also cannot copy EX skills or talents, so you can't duplicate Concoct, and you can't duplicate Shinju Monjigiri and stuff. So yeah, not a fan. There's just so many weaknesses with this, and it could be so much better, but that said, I do not think it's like E tier. There are like niche utilities and stuff, it's just at the bottom end of it. I would actually still take Swift Step over it, even though that's not even that useful, but mainly because this at least makes Abers consistently stronger. This will in a way jimp Throne because she loses her bonus turn, which is huge. Like, her ability to spam Divines every single turn with reinforcing jams, that's so big. Okay, Share SP was buffed in this game compared to the previous game, so this can overheal SP now, and it's also AoE, so that is very, very good. But the issue is that this is on Particio, and you get this upon completing his story. So once you've completed his story, you probably have way more skills and stuff, because you're going to have a ton of JP and EXP, and you'll have a lot of other better skills unlocked. Like, you'll probably have at least 1 or 2 Divines and stuff. And then if it's Particio, he's Merchant, so you probably want to be clicking Hired Help, because that's like a broken ability, or like Donate BP. So those are just outright better on your turn usually than giving SP. And if you are giving SP, something else you could do is just use a Plum, right? So this is helpful, especially if you want to overheal someone, but not super helpful, and there's just so many better options that you could be doing on your turn. Speaking of Hired Help, I'm just going to skip to that. Arguably the best skill in the game, maybe. It's debatable between some of these, especially depending on the situation. But if you also consider the fact that you get this super early on for just 30 JP, and the amount of raw power it gives is just like unparalleled for how much like value you get out of like it that early. Like Kankaki, you at least have to gather the resources. Provoke, you have to BC, you have to clear that whole story. And then I think there's like 1 or 2 other skills that I probably put up here. But Hired Help, you just spend 30 JP and then you start spending money to like do a ton of damage, and it's just so good. There's a reason why it's used in every single main speedrun of the game, in the first and the second. Hopefully in the third they balance this more, or like we don't have to rely on this as much, because I think that would lead to some more interesting strategies. I did try to like do some level 1 runs that, you know, obviously didn't have this, so that was interesting, you know. I guess we'll see. I guess to talk about the actual abilities within Hired Help, if Hired Help was just Hired Help Beastlings alone, that would still be S tier, and it would probably still also be at the top of S tier, because Beastlings alone is just so good. AoE Omni Shield Break is just so busted and just so good in so many ways. Assassins is also really good. Assassins would maybe put it in S tier as well by itself. No, probably not actually, probably A tier, but it's really good because you can full heal your whole team. So imagine like using like a Grail of Life, or an Almighty Olive, or, you know, just a refreshing gem on your whole team. But in addition to that, you do like, you know, 20,000 damage to the enemy, or 30 or 40,000, and it's like very significant chip damage, and you know that it's dagger as well, and the thing that you summon will also not miss, and it's also AoE gets all the enemies. It is just so good. So Beastlings, Assassins is really good, and then Guards, you push back all the turns and do significant damage with it. Mercenaries, you get a defense buff which only lasts 1 turn, which is a little better than the first game, which lasts 2 turns. But still very useful because it chips swords as well. Ruffians debuffs defense, so that's kind of like where is it? Armor Corrosive right here. But it's 1 turn less, but you do also debuff attack, so it's kind of like this plus this, but just like half the turns. But that's still really good, and the fact that it is AoE against all the enemies too is so good. And then Veterans does random weapons, but does a lot of damage, so it's still just very solid. And sometimes you do want the random weapons, and there might be a use case for, you know, for example, maybe you want to unlock a whole bunch of weaknesses to use Lionheart and boost its damage a tiny bit or something. Or you want to guarantee break an enemy, so for example, if an enemy has 3 weapon weaknesses that you see, or that you don't see, then you can just use Hired Help 4 times, and then that will hit at least one of them, because it will always choose different weapons for Hired Help veterans. Thespians, not as useful. There's some cases you might want to use it for, I believe it boosts elemental attack, but mostly not as good. But I mean, it doesn't matter, the other stuff is so good. Alright, Arrow of Fortune is not very good. I would probably put it here-ish. The fact that it gives JP is kind of nice early on. It's just, it doesn't do a ton of damage, and the JP is not going to be that much, but it's not bad for early game, and then it falls off and you pretty much never use it. But it's fine and solid for, you know, just the beginning. I don't know if there's much to really say about it. I know that it's used, for example, in, well, I remember using it in the beginning of Partitions Chapter 1 in the speedrun, and it's fine. Oh, I will also say that this is also interesting for some challenge runs, because you could farm, like, say, 50,000 JP at level 1 by defeating just like a really weak enemy who has some sort of healing ability. So that's kind of cool that it does enable that, but that's not really, like, you know, general gameplay, and I'm kind of ranking this on general gameplay. Rest kind of sucks. Yeah, no, this, yeah, it just kind of sucks. Yeah, the thing is that there's so many other skills in Merchant Toolkit that you can use, and then even though it does heal, I'll put it here. It does heal some status elements, but it doesn't heal the worst of them, because the worst of them is stuff like confusion, unconscious, sleep, and this does not block those, because you won't have your turn, or you'll be silenced and you can't click it. It does heal terror, but terror is not as good, not as bad. Same thing for poison and blind; those aren't as debilitating as, say, losing your entire turn to unconscious. And then the HP and SP heal is okay, but not as good as, you know, other stuff that you could be clicking and using. But it's okay for, like, early game, and if you have nothing to do, maybe it could be alright. And you could use Steel Diffusion, just pass it around. Not a great combination, but a combination, I guess. Alright, Donate BP is, I would say A tier. I'm gonna drink some water, hold on. Okay, so Donate BP is probably A tier in my opinion. So, it basically gives something useful for the character to do every single turn, no matter what. Even if the character's toolkit is completely useless and super low level, they can still always just give BP to another character. And in this game, characters have more turns on average than the previous game, because in this game, there's Hienka, there's Thrones Latent, there's stuff like Salt the Wound, and you'll be able to stack on more turns. And because of that, you'll have more turns to use your BP, and correspondingly, Donate BP has more value. So technically has a slight buff because of that, and is more useful than in the first game. But in general, just giving BP and enabling max boost divines or just max boost attacks constantly is really helpful, and it's also pretty cheap too. I think it's like 1 or 2 SP or something, so really good. If this was a solo gameplay tier list. This would actually sidestep would be S tier. It is not though, so it's probably the top of C or something like that. I'll leave it here for now, but basically there's not much to say about the skill. It blocks a physical attack, and that's solid and good, and it works well with Seal of Diffusion as well. There's some bosses that are annoying, so setting that up is useful, especially if you know some attacks are coming and you have nothing else to do with your turn. It's useful. Since it is on Merchant, it does lose a little value because you do want to be using other stuff like Hired Help, but overall solid skill. And its sister skill, Reflective Vel, is also very good. We'll get to that in a bit. Befelgens I prefer over Dryfandes because it at least has a utility of farming money, but other than that it's not very good because the damage is not great, and then yeah, you mainly only want to use it if you're trying to farm money, and you probably want to do some sort of coerce or provoke, no, not provoke, but challenge build or something else to farm the money with for this. So it's fine, but as far as divines go, it's not particularly great, and usually you should not need that much money, but if you do need it, it's a fine skill to invest in. So yeah. Negotiate. Alright, this is an interesting skill. I would put this in S tier too because this does technically break the game, especially if you farm enough money, and it's not that difficult to farm money in my opinion, because for example you could just get the Arms Master weapons. Some of them are pretty easy to get, like you buy the pickaxe in Ore's Rush, and then you go to Winterbloom, and then you turn that in for the sword, and you turn that in for the Conqueror's sword. You can sell that for 100,000, and if you have Particio for his 24% sales bonus, that's 125k already that you can spend on negotiating enemies, and then you just buy so many turns with it and trivialize a lot of battles. And then there's some exploits you can do to like make a ton of money. Like I would recommend Doss's videos in the amongst the Japanese speedrunners. He had a nice series of like defeating Galidero with minimum level characters. He's a ton of negotiate, and really shows you the potential of the ability. So very powerful and good. I would probably say it is below these others in general though, because you do have to farm a lot of money, and then the money scales up for boss turns. And even though it does give Particio more actions and buys away the enemy, a lot of the other stuff just enables more combos and things. But this is still super broken and super good. So, and it basically, like, these are the kinds of abilities that kind of win matches or turn matches on their own, right? For example, just having Abers will not usually win you the match. You have to like set up and do other stuff. But like having hired up beastlings or some sort of super like creatures that you can spam and break, like that's like so overwhelmingly good. And negotiate, in my opinion, is in that tier. Trying to think of something else I wanted to say is just a side tangent, but back when the game was coming out and I saw that there was a negotiate option, I was hoping that it would actually be like Final Fantasy X, where like you could bribe an enemy and they'll give you a rare item. I think that's such a cool mechanic, so I was a little disappointed that it didn't do that. But this is fine for what it does do, and it does make sense relative to like Particio thematically, him hiring NPCs and stuff for his department store. Although stuff like bribing Galidero is kind of funny, honestly, but I digress. Song of Hope, very good skill, or not very good, but like very solid, and I would probably put it in B tier or so. It's Agnia's EX skill that she unlocks for clearing her story, but Agnia is usually a support character, so having this to extend all the buffs on your team is very helpful. And I don't know if there's much to say. Buffs are good in the game. They often give 50% bonus damage or 33% bonus defense, deep, a 33% damage reduction. So it's all very useful. Alright, sorry for the delay. I was drinking some water. We have a lot more to go through, man. Alright, Lion Dance. Lion Dance is very good. As I just mentioned, any sort of buff in this game is pretty good because Lion Dance gives 50% damage. So for example, if you're about to do 100 damage, then you'll do 150, and then because you're boosting that, it's actually significantly more, right? Because you would usually, instead of doing 100, you max boost to 400, and now Lion Dance adds 1.5x, it's 600 damage, so you gain 200, not just 50. And you know, if you extrapolate that across all of the other multipliers you can get, you know, from breaking and defense debuff, it just adds so much more damage. So overall, really good, and you can buff anyone, and then your support character could have the show goes on to extend turns. So it's overall really good. For right now, I'm gonna switch to Peacock as well. Between these two, I actually do rank Peacock stronger, because even though physical is stronger in this game, there's more options in this game to buff physical attack. Like for example, there's Indomitable Beast that does the same thing, but only for Ochette. Then there's Lion Dance, but then there's also Abide. Where's Abide? And these three all do the same thing at the very least, so there's more options for that. There's less options to buff your elemental attack, so there's more value out of having this. One thing I think is regrettable is that in place of that scholar skill, what is it, Teach or something? No wait, it's not Teach. The Stroke of Genius, instead of having that, they should have just made that like elemental attack up or something. Then to have like the Abide version or something of the elemental attack up, and then it wouldn't be, that other skill wouldn't be such an ass. We'll get to it. It's really bad, but because that Peacock is stronger in my opinion than Lion, even though physical is better in this game. And not much else to say. All three of these are pretty comparable. Between Abide and Lion, these are, you know, kind of similar. It's just that this is 3 turns, this is 2 turns. This is, you know, the warrior has to use it himself, so you want to use it on an empty turn. And then this, someone else can use it. They're both solid and fine. It just depends on the situation, and pretty comparable. Ruinous Kick. This is comparable to Arrow of Fortune. You use it early game and falls off a little bit. The accuracy kind of sucks too if you miss. And then you can't boost it, right? So you can boost it and it'll do more damage, but you're not going to take off more shields, so that is unfortunate. It's a fine skill early game, and you know, you get it in your starting toolkit, but otherwise falls off, and you probably won't be using this a ton. Especially since, like, you'd really rather just unlock, like, find out a shield weakness and then use an actual attack on it, like, I don't know, Poison Axe or something else if it's an axe skill or something. But it's okay. And it's an option, especially if you want to do like a Hail Mary to break something. Stimulate. This is kind of dependent and situational. I'll put it in B tier for now. Turn order manipulation in general is very useful in Octopath, but the thing is that you use your turn to give someone else a turn, and it's still really good because usually you'll have your support character, your dancer doing it, but it's not like, I would say, game breaking or amazing, and it is also situational, right? Because you might not always want to affect the turn order, whereas like you pretty much always constantly want to be buffing and increasing your attack or debuffing them. Maybe not always, but like you're gonna use Armor Corrosive a lot more than say Stimulate, for example. You'll use Lion Dance more often than Stimulate. You won't be stimulating every random encounter. It's only if you really need the turn order or something usually. And then something else about Stimulate is that okay, so if you max boost, you bring the character all the way, you know, to the next person in line, and then every single under boost after that, you move them one slot over toward the end. But sometimes you might want a target a specific slot, and it's a little bit hard to do that. It's hard to explain this, but I just noticed this because I do use this in the speedrun I was routing, and there were some times when I would not want to max boost it, but then I couldn't like partial boost it either to get the exact turn order I want. Basically, it can be situational, but it's still really good, especially since it affects the current turn order. In the previous game, you couldn't do that at all. You could only affect the next turn order. So the fact that this can change the current one can turn the tide in your favor. And this works really well with certain combinations, like for example, Agnia's Latent with this means that all your characters will go in a row, and that's helpful. Dagger Dance, this is mainly for breaking a group of enemies, and otherwise not that useful. It's in like an early game skill. I probably would put it at the bottom of D tier. Pretty unremarkable skill in my opinion. In general, I don't think that Dancer excels if you're trying to use it for, say, you know, Runa's Kick or Dagger Dance for like its attacks. It doesn't. Its stats aren't even that good for physical attacks, which is ironic because you'd rather have an elemental attack starting out than Ruinous Kick if possible, because it would just do more damage. Alright, Bewildering Grace. If you consider like the X100 EXP or X100 JP, those are S tier, right? But you're not guaranteed that. Exploding Fist is probably A tier. Full BP to the whole team is A tier, if maybe S tier. Probably A tier. And then some of the other abilities, like I'm trying to think what else. I can't remember if it's in this game. I know in the last game you could also get Reflect Up on the whole team. And then there's other abilities that can be super helpful. So some of these could potentially be S tier. But the issue is that there's so many bad effects that can screw you over, and it's so random. And even like EXP X5 or JP X5, if you get that in a random battle, that's helpful, but not like amazing. And you lose a lot of time like just gambling with the ability. So it's not reliable, and because of that, it's down here. But its potential could be higher. I'd say in the average case, this is not like horrendous if you're clicking this. It's just that don't expect this to help you, right? You should go in with the expectation that this is going to hurt you more than help you. And that you should be ready for your whole team to just, set yourself to 1 HP and then blow up. That's very possible. Siltige is similar to Doders. I'm trying to think. I would probably put it below Doders, but it's still up there. The thing is that this enables a lot of combinations, like for example Siltige with Prayer for Plenty, or Siltige with Divine Protection for AoE invincibility on the whole team. It enables combinations like that, and that is very helpful. And otherwise, and I guess the small thing is it does unlock more, like the Dancer this next Dancer license if you want that as well. Overall, it's solid. It does lose a little bit because Agnia's innate latent is basically Siltige, so you have slightly less usage of this, like slightly less need of this. But there's times when you don't want Agnia to be the one with the AoE attack. Like you might want AoE Chimera or AoE Overheal with Temenos' EX skill. So in those cases, having this option is nice. So pretty good divine skill, not amazing but solid. Windy Refrain is like Leg Hold Trap but better. So where did I put Leg Hold Trap? It's like here, right? I'd probably actually downgrade this because Windy Refrain is so much better and its power creeps it. And this is a really powerful EX skill, one of the best EX skills in the game. Maybe second? I'm trying to think. Like Negotiate's probably the best, and then maybe this one. The fact that you push all of your characters ahead of the boss is very useful, and if you have Step Ahead, that basically means that you take 7 actions ahead of the boss, and that's super game breaking. Although 4 actions already was game breaking, but and the fact that it does wind damage too is helpful. Like it can chip a shield or something, so it's overall really good. And not much else to say. Yeah, Agnia is super good for support, and this is one of the reasons why. Alright, Shinju Monjigiri. I rate this above Aber's. In a lot of cases, Aber's scaling goes to like 100,000 faster, and it's easier to reach. You also probably unlock Aber's before Shinju, because you'll probably unlock a Divine before you unlock Chapter 4 for Chapter 5 for Hikari. But unlocking Shinju also means that you unlock BT Blade at the same time, so that means that you also get the critical bonus out of Battle Tested Blade. Whereas Aber's usually has a speed dagger, so you don't get like the critical buff. So that does help this a little bit in terms of damage and stuff. And also the fact, the big reason why I put this over Aber's is because it's 2 hits. So now it has a potential of 200,000, or at least like 120,000, 130,000. Aber's will hit the cap quickly and then stay capped at 100,000, and it's still very good because it hits the cap pretty easily, and it's also like a stronger AoE. But the fact that this will target single enemies a lot stronger makes me value it a little bit more. But it's super close between these two, and there's cases where one will outdamage the other and vice versa. Fun fact, these two are the main DPS options for the any percent routes, or the main any percent routes. I guess casting Concoct as well. So really goes to show how powerful some of these abilities are. Yeah, not much else to say. Shinju is just so good. The first skill is AoE and pretty solid. and I believe it has a pretty good defense piercing modifier, and then the second is just a really strong attack. Tenretsuzan is mainly useful. Okay, so in 99% of latent cases for Hikari, you click Hienka because Hienka is super good. But there is a very rare instance when you might want to defeat an Octopuff or a Kate, especially early game, and you don't want to miss, and this attack will not miss. So you use this, and that's the main usage of it. Yeah, I guess I'll put it at the top of D tier for now for that. The thing is that it is really inferior to Hienka, even in terms of just damage, and the Hienka gives you a turn too, so that's just huge. Hienka is so good. Where would I put it? Maybe... Yeah, no, I would put it above these, because this is a lane you get early game. I'd actually put Howl probably lower. Hienka probably around here or so. Basically, having any sort of ability that gives you an extra turn is huge, especially if it does 2 sword hits. That's so much damage. I mean, that's so much utility, and then the fact that it also out damages Tenretsuzan just blows my mind, because this is supposed to be a super strong singular attack, and then Hienka is just better. So you just pretty much almost never want to click this. You want to click Hienka, and yeah. I heard that the animation for this is considered slow, but I mean it looks cool at least too, so I like it a lot, and just adds so much damage. Also, it is 2 hits of the AoE as well, so this can actually break the 100,000 cap as well. So in some cases it can out damage Abers and stuff, so it's very useful. This is maybe the best damaging latent in the early game because of that extra turn. Like, drastic measures will, usually outdamage it as far as the EX goes, but that's not going to give you an extra turn, and that extra turn is huge. Oops. So Getsen, kind of ass. It is an AoE attack, so because of that, there might be cases where you prefer this over Hienka, especially if it's for a random encounter and you just want to nuke the encounter. But still, in most cases, if you're fighting a boss, you're going to be clicking Hienka. And because of that, Sogetsuan and Tenretsuzan are power crept within its own tier. By comparison, say Oshet, she also has 3 latents of Beastly Fang, Claw, and Howl, but those are better balanced, and there's cases where you want to use all 3 at times, depending on the enemy. For Hikari, it's way more imbalanced because Hienka is just so much better than those 2. So that's why the disparity is there for the A and D classes. It ranks. Alright, this is ranked close to Precise Shot for a similar reason. Anything that chips a lot of extra shields is useful. This is Sword, that's Bow. It just depends on the enemy. And then this can miss a little bit, so that's a little unfortunate, and it's random too, so if there's ads and stuff, it could be more annoying. But for single bosses, it's good. And then for the missing, you could just put on unerring bracelets or sharp nuts or something. So overall, pretty useful and nice. It's comparable in the first game to, say, Thousand Spears for this and Arrow Storm for this or something. But these are just a different take on it and different weapon type. And well, this one's a different weapon type, so. I also personally do remember more enemies being troublesome with sword weaknesses. Like a big one was, for example, Enshrouded King had a sword weakness, and you really wanted to chip that guy and beat him as fast as possible because his ramp up was crazy. And then V-Day as well was also weak to sword and stuff, and probably some others I'm not thinking about. So, although I believe Galdera might be weak to bow as well, but by the time you're fighting Galdera, you probably have some beasts or something. Piercing Thrust is fine, but it doesn't add any sort of utility. Like, I would rather have a Spearhead from the first game because it at least lets you go first, and then you quickly get better damaging options. Like for example, Surprise Attack or something. And the special ability of this is just like at max boost you crit. So most of the time you kind of want to just hopefully crit anyway. So it's not amazing, but it's solid. It does do okay damage, but I wouldn't put it in the same tier as like Axe, Poison Axe, or Cleaving Blow because those at least have a little bit of extra utility. So I might put it a tier below. Honestly, it is comparable to Arrow of Fortune and Runa's Kick, but I do prefer it a little bit more because the damage is like significantly higher than those, at least from what I recall. Enervating Slash. Do I want to put an F tier? Yeah, sure, why not? Okay, so this attack has the potential to be really powerful if you put on a whole bunch of buffs, but if you're wasting your time putting on all those buffs, you could just be attacking or something, and then the fact that this clears all your buffs is a little awkward. And also its critical modifier is like 1.2, whereas most attacks are like 1.25 or like even 1.5 for some skills, so it just scales a lot worse. And then also it takes in a lot more defense than other attacks, I believe, so it also scales worse because of that too. I was actually looking at one of the skill thingies for some of them earlier, but its modifiers are just not very good, and then the fact that it takes setup too to get all working, and initially it was also the text for it was mistranslated, so that was also really annoying. Overall, it's just not a very good skill and not designed very well. I'm trying to think what's worse. I don't know, at least Bewildered Grace is, you know, you could get something extremely good, but yeah, this is just such ass. Similar to Weak to Poison, so yeah, I'd probably put this pretty low. If you can stack on a whole bunch of buffs, it could be good, and there are ways to do that, but if you're able to do that, then you could probably win more easily in other ways. So it's kind of a win more thing. Like, if you're setting this up to be really powerful and good, then you could have already set yourself up to win, you know? Okay, Stat Wall, it's okay. This I would compare Stout Wall to Sidestep as I would compare Shackle Foe to Veil of Darkness. This will reduce damage, and this will block the damage entirely. This will reduce damage, this will block that damage entirely. They're not like completely one-to-one, but I would prefer Sidestep usually. But this also is nice because it lasts 3 turns, and then you can Insight to do more combos and stuff. So this is a little bit better compared to this, versus like this to this. But there are similar comparisons of just reducing damage. In general though, you don't want to play too defensively in Octopath, it's more of an offensive game. But it's solid and good, especially with say Insight or something else. And if an enemy is doing a lot of damage, you want to be using this too. I think that the thing that is unfortunate about Stout Wall is that like for defense buffs in this game, you don't want to be buffing one character, right? Because if you buff one character and the boss attacks the other 3, they don't have the defense buff, so that's not as useful. Whereas, say, if you put on Shackle Foe, then you debuff the boss and he attacks, and now everyone gets that bonus, right? For sure. So because of that, Shackle Foe is just better than this, even though this is 1 turn more. This and Mole Dance would be better if they were AoE in some capacity, or if you could just spread the defense somehow. Alright, Insight combines well with Stout Wall and draws all of the physical attacks consistently. I can't remember if it works on magical attacks. I believe Doyd had said it does in the first game, but I can't remember now. But overall, it's really useful for drawing the attacks, especially if you know that there's something really bad coming your way, if you want to block a status effect or something else. Very good and very useful because of that. I feel like some of these might need to be shifted around. I don't know, it feels kind of weird that like Rehabilitate's up here. I would maybe bring this down a little bit. Here? Yeah. And Insight probably still around here, because I might bump these attacking buffs a little higher. Maybe here, actually, yeah. And Lion Dance around here too. And something like that or something, and then yeah, Indomitable Beast would probably be a little higher too, because I do value the offensive buffs more than the defensive ones and such. And then these maintain their value for a long time, because there's a lot of cases where you'd want to buff a character. I do think that some of the buffs are a little bit weakened because Throne's Knight ability gives you the buffs, so if you're fighting with Throne, these are redundant, right? So in that case, maybe you would actually reduce it a little bit, but it's hard to factor in all the possibilities of things occurring and stuff, so overall, this is okay. And alright, let's go back to Insight. It's solid and good, blocks all attacks, or draws in all attacks consistently. So it's especially nice if you, for example, know that the enemy has an ejection attack, like say the Scourge of the Sea will always knock someone away. You can insight that so that you knock away the weakest character or something. Vengeful I like quite a bit because its damage is actually really high and it'll always chip a shield, so it's pretty good in that vein. You do, however, want them to target you, and in a party setting that's a little harder to do, but it's still pretty good. I'd probably put it near the top of C or something like that. The damage is really high too relative to like other abilities, and the fact that you always chip a shield is nice too. Yeah, and also for unboosted you get, I believe, 2 charges of this, so you'll retaliate twice, and that's helpful and nice. And with 1 boost you get 3 charges, so you retaliate 3 times. So it's better than, you know, just a 1-for-1 attacking. Brands is power crept by Shinju Monjigiri, unfortunately, but you do probably unlock this before Shinju, but it's still not very good because, you know, by the time you unlock it, you probably will unlock Shinju Monjigiri soon after, if you're Hikari. If you're not Hikari, then you probably want to unlock Abers instead for damage if you're having a DPS class. But I will say one thing for Brands is that it's in the warrior tree already. So whereas, say, Abers, it requires 4,630 for warrior for deal more damage, and then all of the thief tree plus Abers, this Brands will only require the warrior tree and then 5,000, so you save 4,600 JP, which is significant sometimes, so that is not bad. And then Brands does do really good damage and solid. I would probably put it, yeah, maybe at the bottom of B tier, honestly. Yeah, it's fine and solid and good, yeah, not much more to say. Stuff like, say, HP Thief and Surprise Attack, you might think, oh, why are you putting it above Brands? Well, I am factoring in like how long it takes to unlock this and the power creep that quickly follows this because of these abilities. If you got Brands, say, like it's your first ability, this would be way higher. Like this might be A tier or S tier if this was like the first thing you unlocked. It probably would be S tier if this was the first ability you unlocked outright, you know, because it's just so good. But I mean, that goes for a lot of stuff, you know, like if you unlock Dryfendi's as your first ability, then like outright, then it's probably A tier at least, you know. But you have to keep in mind when you get these abilities too. Ultimate Stance, kinda ass. Well, not kinda ass, it is ass. Kinda sucks. Not much to say. You extend your basic attacks of Hikari's to the AoE, and that's not very good because you well, for one thing, it's Hikari, so you'd rather be doing some strong attacks, and because he has a ton of useful learn skills, which, you know, maybe one day I'll do a tier list for learn skills. Let me know if that would interest you. But even without that, there's not a ton of enemies where you want to extend your basic attack to make AoE. You know, you'd rather just do a strong AoE and defeat them. The only use case I've ever seen is putting on double tomahawk and fighting Galdera's ads, and then using the the max boost to break all the axe shields at once. But that was for a very specific challenge run, and otherwise I never saw anyone wanting to use this ability, and I myself pretty much almost never used it except to test it, and yeah, it's just really bad. So it's down here with the rest of the bad skills that you pretty much never ever should be clicking. Alright, Changeable Catapult is so good. Probably around here or so. The fact that you get access to every single weapon type, and there's a glitch with this too, where you can, if you swap around the weapons and stuff, it always uses the stats of the last weapon that you swap to. So for example, you could take the battle tested blade and apply the battle tested blade's stats to a staff and launch a staff with those stats. And because of that, you can hit for weakness on so many more enemies and do so much more bonus damage. And then also this doesn't use any SP, so that is huge. In fact, I'm actually gonna bump it because of that. Like, I know that doesn't seem like very much, but like it adds up over time when you're spamming this on every single battle. And that's just so good. And in fact, you get all of the weapon types, and yeah, it's just so good. As long as you understand how its damage works. Yeah, I don't know, somewhere around here. Yeah, so good. There's a reason why Inventor is the best advanced job, in my opinion, even above Arms Master. Alright, Springy Boots is extremely good because it's good turn control, but also it's multiple turns of going first. So that's really useful for planning ahead strategies and stuff. And if you're using Agnia, then you also make the turn order consistent with her latent on it, or Siltige on the latent for it, and it lets you do combinations of attacks and plan out your turns way better. So because of that, I would rate it super high, and it enables a lot of combos and stuff. And yeah, just overall a super good ability. Something like there or something. Probably a little bit lower. But yeah, going first consistently for multiple turns is just huge. Alright, this is an extremely good skill, Critical Scope. I don't think it's busted, but it's like Divination from the first game done right, or like Drysang Spell from the first game done right, and it's like all combined into one. And this is one of the few ways that, actually, yeah, this is one of the few ways that magic can crit. I think that the only other thing is Targeted Strike from Hikari's learned skills that he gets from Dulcinea, and then that will also apply Critical Scope. But that's basically the same thing. It just increases physical damage, also magic damage, and then some attacks will increase significantly more because their critical modifier is more, like I think limb for limb is like 1.5x or so, and then I'm trying to think. Finisher's Claws also gets a huge bonus out of this too, so that's super useful. And then it's not even just like 1 or 2 turns. Like Armor Corrosive is only 1 or 2 turns. This is like 5 or 4 turns or something. So yeah, just an amazing skill. Oh, and also it passes invincibility. I don't know why, but it works on like say V-Days and Galdera's like core when they have invincible on. So that's kind of strange, but that's another reason why this is so good. I don't think it's game breaking, but it's like the upper end of A tier. And yes, I do actually value it over Abers and Shinju Monjigiri and such. Like there's multiple options for AoE or just strong damage. Like you have these 2 abilities in Lionheart and Concoct and all this stuff, but you only really have Critical Scope for crit, right? So there's nothing else that can do this, so it's just so good. I wonder if there should be a tier between S and A, and if so, this would go there, in my opinion, because it is so good. Elemental Bottle Bomb is extremely good as well. Some of these are a little hard to read in terms of the lettering, because it kind of blends into the image. I'm trying to think where I would rate this. Like for its breaking and stuff, it's so good. But you do have to have the elements unlocked, so that could be a little annoying, but once you do have it unlocked, it can break a lot of shields. Also, it depends on the enemy too, right? Because if the enemy only has 1 elemental weakness, it's not that broken or anything, but if the enemy has like 3 elemental weaknesses, you chuck this with like 3 BP and they always get broken. So that's really nice. So overall, it's a really solid and strong ability, and very good. Tin Horn is one of the lesser good Inventor abilities because it only fills up the latent bar, and I think it's only at max boost that it like full heals it or something. But it's fine. It's just that like you do have Lychees and stuff, and Inventor's other stuff is better, like Critical Scope, Changeable Catapult, and things. And then generally, if you want to fill someone's latent, you want to use a Reinforcing or like a Lychee L or something that will boost someone's latent like really fast all the way, or just do damage on your turn. So this is not like amazing. Yeah, probably here or something for Tin Horn. Hastening Hammer. This is good for damage, honestly, because it actually does a lot of damage. I remember it outdamaged, say, Beastly Fang from my testing. But the issue is that you can only use it once, and then you can't use it again. And then also, even though the damage is really good, the side effect of like decreasing the number of turns to reuse an invention is not that great, because usually you only want to use an invention once and hopefully never and quickly end the battle afterwards, hopefully. But sometimes it could be helpful, so because of that I would put it okay as an okay skill, but it's not amazing. I'm trying to think where to put this, because you can only use it once and then you can't use it again is the other issue. I'd probably rank it close to Tin Horn. But because the damage is so high, I will put it above these attacking skills. And probably above the coverage skills too. Maybe here. Archer's Coil, at max boost this is kind of like a revitalizing gem, so that's kind of nice, but you can only use it once, but it could be really good, especially if you use Agnia with it. It could be a really good combination. I would say it's a solid skill. It's limited by the fact that you can only use it once, and also I remember that the ingredient for this, it requires like a nighttime mug that's actually really strong, so you're only gonna get this at the end of the game usually, so it's kind of unfortunate. I think it's a nighttime mug. I'm trying to think how else you get it. Oh, I think it's like a high level entry or something. So yeah, kind of annoying to obtain. So that's something else too. Critical Scope is super easy to unlock in terms of the ingredients. Changeable Catapult you get right away too, Springy Bolts as well, and Elemental Bottle Bomb. So that's something else of note, is that the unlocking, like the items you need for these are easier to obtain. Alright, I'm gonna get some water real quick and then we'll continue. All-purpose tool is okay. The thing is that you don't usually want to be recharging your inventions, and especially not like multiple at once. So like I get the idea behind the design of the class, but they kind of really messed up, or like kind of flopped it. You pretty much only want to use each invention once and hopefully be able to burst the bosses from there, and you can definitely do that with good planning. So there's not a ton of cases where you actually use this, honestly, and I think most people casually will not recharge inventions to reuse it. This and the other skill, was it like Seal of Eternity or whatever, that makes buffs last forever, made me think, like, did the developers actually expect boss battles to like last super long, like 20 or 30 turns or something, to get the value out of it? Because that doesn't happen. This game, bosses like kill over like, I don't know, like toddlers or something. Like the bosses are really weak if you have good DPS setup and stuff. Sixfold is really nice for scouting weaknesses, and then also it combos nicely with Temenos' Latent, and otherwise not much else to say. It doesn't trigger the HP gain on Axe. That's also nice too, because you maintain peak performance, so it's solid and fine. I would probably put it here because it does chip a lot of shields, and you could just spam this over and over, and like pretty much every single enemy was weak to at least 1 or 2 weapon types, so spamming this will help break sooner. You don't want to spam this too much though, because on Arms Master's turn you usually want to be using Lionheart Axe, which we might as well just get to, because that's like the big elephant in the room. This thing outdamages Shinju Monjigiri, and has a minor, you can even buff it even further if you unlock all the weaknesses, you know, reveal them all. But even if you don't reveal them all, it still outdamages it from what I recall. And it's also 2 attacks, so it can reach the 200,000 cap sooner, whereas, you know, Aber's is still 100,000, so it's really good. And Axe in general is pretty powerful. And then because you have it as Axe, you can you don't have to keep the Conqueror's Sword. You could put on Battle Tested Blade for even more damage, and then as well as the Giant's Club. So alright, not gonna lie, I did not use Bulwark much at all. I think I used it like once or twice, or maybe 3 times, so I don't actually remember it super well. I just remember it not being very good, and in most cases you would rather use Lionheart Axe, or, you know, something more offensively oriented, or just better. Okay, Conqueror's Sword. The weakness of this is that you cannot put on Battle Tested Blade, and also if you're using Conqueror's Sword, you're not using Lionheart, and Lionheart's just way better than Conqueror's Sword. And Conqueror's Sword is solid, right? It can outdamage something like Brands, or well, it depends like on at what point you use it in the turn order, but it could be really powerful. But the thing is, like, you'd rather be using Lionheart Axe. I will probably still put this like semi ahead of Brands, because you can gain access to this sooner than Lionheart, in my opinion, because it's just you buy a pickaxe and then you can get it, whereas this one you do have to defeat a boss. But the issue with this is that you don't want to lose Battle Tested Blade, you want to keep Battle Tested Blade, so yeah. But if the enemy's broken, it does do a lot more damage too, so yeah. Warlord's Spear is better than where did I put Conquerors? Is better than Conquerors because it at least has the AoE utility, so you might not want to use Lionheart if there's an AoE group in front of you, and it scales like 10% more per enemy. so that is helpful for dealing damage. And then I'm trying to think what else. Not much else to say. It does solid damage. I remember it being comparable to catapult, to changeable catapult, and that was nice to have a strong physical AoE DPS. Dancer's Blade is okay. You can get a lot of status elements out of it, so that's nice. And also chipping 3 dagger, weaknesses is also helpful. It does lose a little value because HP Thief is still good by itself if you want chip dagger, but the bonus poison and other status effects can be nice. And it procs pretty often because you're using 3 attacks each time. But it's not amazing, but it's fine. The main issue I think with this and this and this is that all of them are inferior to Lionheart in terms of damage, so you're usually just using Lionheart. So that's something else too that some of these skills suffer from, is like the opportunity cost you lose, because any turn you click this is a turn you don't click this, and you should be clicking this, because it's just so good. You just wipe bosses down. I don't know if I used this skill casually. I don't think I did. I have no idea how this skill ranks. I will put it here, I guess. I think it's because it was unlocked via the what was it? It's like that petrifying boss, right? Behemoth or something, I think? I can't remember, but or is this the one that you buy from someone in like Timberane? I can't remember, but I didn't use this casually, I think. So I don't actually know if I've used this ability before. So this might be an unfair ranking. I just don't remember it, actually. I honestly don't. But regardless, I know that it is worse than Lionheart, so. Okay, this is similar to Conqueror's Axe in the way that if you have this on, you don't have Giant's Club on, and if you don't have Giant's Club on, you don't have the modifier, and you really want that modifier on your Arms Master. So that's unfortunate. Also, I think that this has like unique properties, right? Like it uses like elemental attack against the physical defense or something. So that's kind of interesting, and it's a cool little gimmick. I think there's a Pokemon move that does the same thing, but still not like amazing to be using, especially since it's easier to buff physical attack in this game, honestly. So it's not as good. If this was in the first game, it might be even better because it was easier to scale up the elemental attack. But probably put it higher at least or something. I don't know if Dancer's Blade is that good, honestly, for the status effects and stuff. I mean, it's better than Dancer's Dagger Dance, I guess. I don't know. I might put this higher too, because there are times when you might want to attack elementally. Maybe. The other thing is, like, let's say that this is on your mage, right? If this is on your mage, you might want to just put on a strong staff and then use elemental potency weapons too. So it really depends. I don't know. Yeah, maybe something like that. Yeah, it's really hard to decide for some of these. Maybe something like that or something. Maybe something like that, I'm not sure. It could really vary. I'm really uncertain on some of these because I didn't use a lot of these casually, like a ton. Malice. I'm trying to remember if this is the HP one or the SP one, or... Alright, I could actually just look this up, couldn't I? Malice. Is this the HP one? HP Drain. Okay, yeah. Keep getting this mixed up. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter. Both of them kind of suck because they're inferior to Fireball and Ice Wind. And then the HP and SP is not very much, so it's just not very good. Probably put them to similarly, and not much to say. The advanced jobs in this game kind of suck in general. They're not very good. Like, there's a lot of weaknesses in them and stuff. Hex, I believe, extends debuffs, right? God damn, I do not remember this. Hex. Wow. Yeah, alright. Something like that. It's not great, it's fine. I think that there's some uses of it, but I will be honest, I didn't use it a ton casually either. because by the time you unlock Arcanist and Conjurer, they come kind of late, and they're kind of like utility and defensive based, but they're not very good utility or defensive based. So yeah, honestly, I'm not even sure if I should be ranking some of these. Seal of Diffusion is one of the better ones because it can combo with, say, like Rest, and there's a Hikari ability, Take Cover, that is like Sidestep, combos with Sidestep as well. And I think that's some other stuff it could combo with, but not amazing, but it's an option, I guess, if you do want to use it. Where did I put Sidestep? Sidestep is here, right? This will definitely go below Sidestep then. Maybe something like here? I don't know, something like that. This inversion flips, you know, negatives to positives and stuff. You really have to build around it, so if you're gonna build around it, you might as well build something that's actually good, you know? There's some, like, Eye of Calamity that you can buff, that, you know, it gives you a debuff at the start, and then you can make it buffs at the start. And then there's some Hikari abilities too, like, I think Demonic Whispers or something, I can't remember. And that could be okay for this, but usually you don't want to, you know, be building around that because it's not like an amazing combo or something. So yeah, especially since it takes a whole turn out to do it. Alright, Seal of Immortality. I believe this gives you the Hang Tough ability, right? Or something like that. Seal of Immortality. Yeah, basically kind of like Hang Tough. It's okay, but I mean, you're not going to be using this a ton. If you expect an attack to be coming that is going to leave you almost KO'd, it's better to try to just block the attack, or, you know, break the opponent before they attack and stuff. Maybe it could be, maybe there's some combination I'm not thinking about that makes it more useful, but Arcanist and Conjurer are not that great. You don't really want to use them a ton. Reflective is maybe the best skill out of their entire kit. In general, I would say that elemental attacks in this game are worse than, like, from the enemy, are like more dangerous than physical attacks, usually. Depends on the enemy too, but because of that, blocking or reflecting that ability is useful. I do kind of find it ironic though that they put Sidestep on Merchant still, but then they took Reflective off of Cleric and moved it to an advanced job, because this wouldn't have broken Cleric or anything. Leaving this on Cleric would have given it a buff, and it could use the buff, and it's not, you know, bad for it. But this is maybe the best of them. And, you know, if you put it on Agnia to use Latent with this, it could be a nice little combination too. Okay, Seal of Eternity. Wow, I'm getting tired. Okay, but we're almost there. I would say that this is the one that makes AoE, your buff last forever, right? Yeah, battles in this game just don't last that long. You shouldn't need this, and then if the battle is lasting that long, then that's probably a super boss or something, and most of those will wipe your buffs. And I'm pretty sure this does not block that. And even if it does block that, you just generally don't want to be spending, like, your BP to do this. And also, isn't there a random buff too that it does, right? It's like a random buff. Let's see. Yeah, it's a random buff. Like, that's so bad. Like, if it could at least target, like, okay, I guess you could build around it where, like, you select one super buff, like, say, Alfrix, and then repeat that. But, the fact that it's random means that you only have Alfrix on, so it's really annoying to work around. Yeah, that's not very good. Not F tier, but it's bad. Dry Fantasy is definitely better than that. And it's actually better than that. Better than that. Yeah, no, it doesn't deserve to be as bad as all these, but yeah. So everything here is pretty bad. So, alright, Heavenly Shine. I believe this is Temnos's, right? Yeah. Oh man, I'm getting some of the names mixed up. I'll come back to this in a second. Heal Wounds is comparable to Healing Touch, but just, in my opinion, a little worse. Because Healing Touch at least will revive enemies. Heal Wounds will not, enemies, but allies. Heal Wounds will not revive your allies, so you have to do Revive separately. And it doesn't heal a ton too, you know, so I don't like it that much because of it. It is nice to have that healing, especially since you can't buy Great Bunches in this game, so because of that, the value of this move does increase a little bit more. But it's just not that good. But healing's solid. I mean, I would say it's a solid C tier, like not a bad skill. but not an amazing one, but solid and fine, and it's usable, right? Like anything in this tier, it's stuff that you could use and you will use and stuff. I'd say C tier and above is like that cutoff of something that's like generally pretty useful most of the time, or in majority of cases, at least until like late game or something, and then it falls off. Alright, Prayer to the Flame. Alright, this is the one that gives defense and elemental defense. I get this and Prayer for Plenty mixed up sometimes, but Prayer for Plenty is the one that overheals. This move's kinda ass, kinda sucks, because it's one character that you use it on, and then if the enemy does not attack that character, it's not gonna be as good. So this should have been AoE in my opinion, and that would have buffed it enough to be good. For example, I'd rather have hired help mercenaries to have the defense buff. I mean, this also gives elemental defense if I remember correctly, but still not very good because the boss might not attack you or something. And I'm pretty sure that this also doesn't heal. Even though this increases your elemental defense, it doesn't heal. It doesn't increase your healing, which scales off of elemental defense because it uses your base stats. So that's something else that makes it worse. I would say, yeah, probably around here. Mystical Staff is a very good skill. It's not as good as HP Thief because the damage is less, but well, I guess in a way Staff is more valuable to attack and double break with, because for example there's Dagger Dance, there's that triple hit Arms Master skill that I'm already forgetting that I was clicking on a moment ago. There's more ways to do multiple dagger hits and 1,000 blades or something, whereas Mystical Staff there's less ways to do multi-hit staffs. So that is nice, and in that way it is better than HP Thief, which is at where is it? It's here, right? Yeah. So this is better than HP Thief in that way, and then it gains SP, which I value more than HP. But then it loses value because it is on Cleric, so you do less damage. But you're mainly using this to chip shields, I think, and maybe to heal some SP. But I would actually say this is above HP Thief because multi-hit staff is worth more than Dagger. Alright, Luminescence is solid and good. I think that the Holy element, or the Light element in general, is solid, and it is above, well, for one thing, it's AoE, so it's a little bit better than the single target ones, because you're mainly using this to chip anyway. And then this one also works with, this becomes, I believe that with Elephants, this becomes Lux, so that is also really nice. But I believe Light has only one boosting weapon, which is like the staffs. You have multiple staffs, but you can only use the one, so it's not going to be that much, not going to become that much stronger. But it's okay for a coverage AoE attack. Alright, Sacred Shield is a defensive ability, kind of like Prayer to the Flame. I think I probably prefer this over Prayer to the Flame, because if there's some big attack coming, you could do this for 99% reduction at max boost, and then you will survive it for sure. Whereas Prayer to the Flame, you might not survive it for sure. And also, this lasts, I believe, until someone attacks you, whereas this lasts just turn order. It's like 2 turns. So, if someone doesn't attack you, if the boss doesn't attack you in like the 2 turns or something, this is useless. This will eventually be useful once someone does attack you. Pretty sure that it's like that. It's been a long time since I used this. But also, fun fact, this used to be in speedrun routes before we knew about the abating orb glitch, because this would be used to tank the boss attacks and then let them talk and then we defeat them. Revive is good. It's kind of like Heal Wounds, but it's more valuable because there's less options to AoE heal your whole party. I believe there's Almighty Olives, Grail of Lives, and then Revive. And I'm trying to think what else, but any other combination would need something like, say, Seal Thieves into Healing Touch, or Doders into Olive or something. So that's Revive. Oh, something else about Doter is that it can actually be offensive too. Like if you use it and then use Decaying Dragon Essence, you can chip 4 shields from everyone. Alright, Alfric's Blessing. Okay, this is another S tier skill. Fortunately, this is probably the best balance of these because it's a divine, and then because of that you unlock it late. Whereas like a lot of this stuff you can unlock sooner, except for Provoke Beast. But like this you get at the start of the game. This you can get at the start. This you just go to the shrine and you get it. This you actually have to grind a lot of JP for and get the other cleric licenses and stuff, but it's still the best divine in the game because taking extra turns is huge. Something I've always thought is that in the previous game, patience was always underrated, even amongst players that liked it. Like, I think that it was kind of undervalued for how much an extra turn will give. Like, even an attacker will benefit from an extra turn, even if you don't have the BP. Like, it's just huge. So getting constant extra turns is really good, and this Alfrix is even better than the first game's Alfrix because of it. And also the fact that turn orders are consistently fixed in the reverse order makes it easy to plan out strategies and stuff. So you get huge value out of it. Alright, this is Temenos' overheal ability that can heal you to 9999. So it's super good because of that. I would say A tier actually. Alright, let me get some water. I didn't think that this would take so long to do. Oh my god, my throat is like really parched. Okay, sorry to complain, let's continue. Prayer for Plenty. It overheals you potentially close to 9999, and then if you put Seal Thieves onto did not mean to move that around. If you put Seal Thieves onto Temenos and then use this, then you can overheal everyone, and then they have really good survivability, so that's very good. Only Temenos can learn it, but it's an EX skill, and you can get it like, you know, from the start of the game, so that's very useful. And heals a solid amount too. So overall, just a very good ability. Not sure what else to say about it. I do like that, you know, they balanced this compared to the previous game, which had Saving Grace, and you could just use an Olive of Life or Alphen to get 9999s on everyone. This one, only Temenos can do it, and he can only do it like one at a time unless you use another divine on it, so it balances it a little bit more. But overall, this is super good and increases your survivability tremendously, especially if Temenos has good elemental defense. Alright, Heavenly Shine. This is hard for me to rate because the raw damage of it, if you have a lot of SP, is huge. And this is Temenos' best DPS if he's using an elemental attack build. And then you could also use Alphans with it too to do tremendous damage, so it's very powerful. It's comparable to say like drastic measures in the way that it is situational. You know, you do want to set up, say, elemental defense down and peacock and then have a lot of SP, but it's a little bit more usable than drastic measures. Granted, you spend all of your SP to use it, so you want to like Forbidden Elixir or Jam or something afterwards to heal up if you want to spam this. But it is, you know, it's just scaled really well and very powerfully. I think it caps at what, like 108, wait, 540 or so, I can't remember how much SP it caps at, but I know that there is a cap, but it scales really well, you know, up until that point. And then you can boost it with a light staff or whatnot, and then yeah, it's so good, so powerful. And also it looks really cool too. And the fact that Alphans works on it means that it can hit the 300,000 cap as well, and that's very useful. I would say it's probably not A tier though, actually. It's a solid attacking skill for DPS, but it's kind of hard to rate too. Maybe something like this or something. Yeah. One True Magic is probably comparable in a way. I'll explain in a little bit. Alright, the runes. Conjure Flame and Conjure Ice, Lightning, Gust. All these are pretty comparable. They're not very good because in the first game, runes were really good since they scaled really well. Maybe around here or something. I'll put these together. In the first game, runes were really powerful because like their modifiers were really good, and then they were a little slow because you could only use it on one character at a time unless you used, you know, transfer rune and then transferred it. But in this game they became AoE all at once, but they like nerfed the power like so much that it's just not very good unless you build around it. And in general, it's hard to build around it. And there's also you know, if you do have really good elemental attack or physical attack, you just want to be using some other attack than this, you know, because someone has to set this up and then you do an attack with it. Overall, it's just a little bit difficult to use, and its power is not worth it in this game, in my opinion. Alright, Prayer for Rain. I have trouble remembering what this does. What the hell? Okay, yeah, so gives SP to everyone. kind of ass. Maybe that's why I don't remember it, because I pushed it from my memory. I don't know, something like that. Maybe here. I don't know. Bottom of E, top of F, something like that. It's not very useful to give SP to everyone. Cassie's Concoct does that too. It's just not that useful. Just use a plum, you know, and don't use a turn action on it or whatever. Maybe it could be okay if like you're using really SP heavy abilities, like say whatchamacallit, Sacred Effulgence or something. But meh, usually not that useful to be restoring your SP. Alright, this is like the blocks debuffs or so. So that's okay. If you know that a debuff is coming, it could be helpful. Not a ton of not a ton of cases where it's useful. So a little niche, but some niches it could be good in, you know, especially if you know the debuff is coming. So that can be nice. If I recall correctly, this is kind of basically like Celestial Intervention, but only for your class or something like that. So it's fine. Not great though. Maybe here. Something like that. Alright, this is kind of like the Grail of Life or something, but then your character becomes like becomes paralyzed until the next like 2 or 3 turns or something like that. But because of that, you do lose your character completely. And then the other thing is like this is a scenario where like one character survives and he uses this and brings everyone back, right? But if the whole rest of your party was wiped, then something like the enemy, like it kind of just destroyed your team. So I don't know, you kind of don't want your opponent to be doing that, you know. And then if your party comes back without any of the buffs or anything, it's hard to recover that. Also, this is just outright inferior to Almighty Olives and Grail of Lives in my opinion. You'd rather just use those. So yeah. Not much to say about that. Not much more to say. BP boost. Okay. The worst divine in the game. I believe it's the worst divine in the game. Trying to think if there's a worse divine. I don't think so. I think that this is the worst divine in the game. Also because of the point at which you get it, right? Because it's so much JP for the advanced job divines. It could be useful, especially since I think you can actually extend this with like Song of Hope or something. But it was bad in the first game, it's bad in this one, and the fact that it's a divine, so it takes more JP than anything else on one of the hardest classes to unlock, that you unlock the latest in the game, and then you know, use this and the boss might wipe your buff or something, and then you gain what, 1 extra BP extra per turn if you don't boost. Whereas you want to be boosting. It's just so bad in so many ways. And I should probably bump this down, honestly. Yeah. I mean, there's cases where you might want to use this, right? But no, actually, I can't even justify it. It's just really bad. If this was one of the skills you unlock at the beginning of the game as like a normal skill, then it's okay. Yeah, it's not terrible. But as it is, it's horrible. So. One True Magic is similar to Heavenly Shine, you know, it does magic DPS and does, you know, very good damage. Also always chips the shield, so that's kind of nice, and scales pretty well and stuff. This is One True Magic is comparable to triple boosting with like 3 potency weapons, and it's debatable what is better. So if the enemy's like elemental defense is super high, then One True Magic will pierce more, so it'll be better. But there's very few enemies that qualify. So for example, Galdera's main body, this would do more damage on the eye, for example the Omniscient Eye. But a lot of other cases and general use cases, triple boosting does more damage. But the thing is that triple boosting with Oswald, you want to basically use Arms Master on Oswald, and then because of that you lose Lionheart Axe, which is huge value that you lose. You could just double boost with Warrior or, you know, Hunter or something for fire or ice, but then One True Magic is just more damage and it's better. So because of that, this generally is Oswald's best general DPS option, especially since it doesn't require any setup or anything. Well, but it is really expensive in terms of SP, especially if you use Price of Power. But it is worth it in terms of the damage. It's pretty solid. Worse than, you know, the physical DPSs, but as far as the elemental attack DPSs go, it's good and solid, you know. These two and then Concoct are the best of the elemental ones, and then these three are the best of the physical ones, excluding Hikari's learned skills. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but those are the main DPS sources. I rate this alongside One True Magic and Heavenly Shine because these are the magic DPSs of the game. You use Alphins to increase these to Ignis Ardere and Glassy's Claudere, and then you can use those. But as I mentioned, One True Magic, you get to keep Arms Master for someone else. And you can also, even if you don't use Lionheart Axe, if you use like Shinju or something, you can give the attack buff or something, the modifiers and stuff, and then they can equip Giant's Club and things. So yeah, in general, One True Magic is just a little simpler in my opinion. And then you also don't have to set up, well, you actually do want to still set up Alphins, but yeah. These are comparable. Well, it's kind of funny, like these beginning skills to this end game level skill, but for their potential and damage, it's comparable. I do kind of prefer these over Heavenly Shine because these are a little bit easier to spam, whereas Heavenly Shine, every single turn you have to have someone jam them. Although you kind of need that for this, but I don't know, these four are all kind of comparable. I will probably put Alphins in the same region because you're using these in combination with each other as kind of a cluster, kind of like how these are a cluster of physical attacks. Lightning Bolt is far worse than these because for one thing, you can't triple boost. You can only triple boost the fire and the ice, and then yeah, actually that's the main reason why. You also get these two as like the starting skills, and then this is not one of the starting skills. And then I believe that the boosting weapons are just a little bit more annoying. Like for example, there's like, you know, 3 of the ice whatchamacallits axes, and then 2 spears and 2 daggers. Whereas, you know, I think there's like, well, there's like the thunder baton. I think there's like 2 staffs of this, but yeah, you're more limited basically with this. Right here or something like that. It is better than these you know, single target ones because coverage is nice. Let's do Elemental Barrage because that's thematically pretty close. This is similar to Precise Shot and Aggressive Slash where it does multiple hits, but unlike those where Precise Shot will do only bow and Aggressive will do only sword, this does fire, ice, and lightning. And because of that, it is technically a little bit worse because you can't predict what it is. Like if you only need ice, it might not hit the ice, and there's very few enemies that are weak to all 3. But one thing that is nice is that this does not miss, whereas like this could miss and even this could miss, but this does not miss, and it hits as many as this. So this combos really nicely with Temnos especially, but still it's unfortunate that it couldn't just be a single element. Like I would actually prefer if this was all fire or something, but no dice. This could also be a little bit good for scouting, you know, if you think that they might be weak to one of the things, you want to boost into that. It's not terrible, but still not great. Mainly you want to use this if the enemy is weak to at least 2 of the fire, ice, or lightning, and then hope to break or, you know, chip shields. But I do prefer the consistency of these, but these 3 are all comparable. Analyze has nice utility because especially in a casual playthrough you might not know the weaknesses of an enemy, so that will unlock it and give you the information you need, and also you contract HP so you know when to reach certain thresholds or how close you are. And then there's other stuff like it helps power up Elemental Bottle Bomb, and it powers up Lionheart Axe because it makes those more likely to be able to track weaknesses like an elemental weakness for this, or just increasing the damage to the Lionheart, which goes up 10% per revealed weakness. So Analyze, good solid ability, more utility than anything else, but good utility. I just wish that the HP stood on the screen for more than 1 second, but I like it, and I think it's solid and good. Like information, I think people undervalue in a game like this, but information is really important. There's a reason why like Oswald's Study Foe is actually really useful casually. Same thing for Cyrus's. Stroke of Genius. This is the random buffing thing, right? Yeah, this is the random ass buff thing. This is one of the worst skills in the game because you can't predict what you're gonna get, and then rather than, you know, gamble for good skills, this is kind of like Bewildering Grace, but like the chances of the big payoff are basically 0. So this is like way worse. Like you might get elemental attack up, and actually, is there anything else that you really want in Scholar? You can't. I don't think there really is. Like you want elemental attack up and nothing else really, right? So it would be so much better if this was just Peacock Strut or something, you know? Yeah, this is. I don't know if this is the worst skill in the game. This might be what I put as the worst. I don't know. Just so random and unreliable. Teach is pretty bad too. This imparts Oswald's buffs onto someone. Let me double check that because I might be misremembering. Yeah, that's pretty ass. I did remember that correctly. So yeah, maybe if you like, you know, Stroke of Genius and then Teach, maybe that was like the combination they were thinking about, but that's really slow to do, and then you'd rather just use the buff itself. Like, you know, if you want to teach someone the physical attack buff, then just Lion Dance or something. It's been so long since I used some of these, but I just remember them being ass. Advanced Magic is pretty solid, comparable to like Alphins and the others for buffing these. Even though this is like weaker than this is not a divine, so you get this a lot sooner, and because of that you can power these skills up sooner. And especially, you know, if there's an empty turn or something, or you're trying to set up for a boss, that's very useful. And I do prefer how they did it in this game, where, you know, you have this instead of, say, Blizzard and Lightning Blast outright. Because in the previous game, you pretty much never click Lightning. You never click Lightning Bolt if you unlock Lightning Blast, usually, you know. So in this game, these maintain their usefulness throughout, and same for this. So, okay, holy shit, that took forever. But alright, that was my Octopath Traveler 2 tier list for all the jobs and EXP skills and latent powers. If you have any opinions, feel free to share them below. If you have your own disagreements or whatnot, some of these could definitely be sorted around and might shift around and stuff, but overall I think it's solid. I guess just to talk about the tiers a little bit, S, basically stuff that breaks the game. A is stuff that's extremely powerful and good. You're constantly using these in battle, and if you have the option to use these, you usually do want to use these, and these also enable a lot of combos and high damage attacks and stuff. And you'll also see a lot more like options for like increasing your damage here as well, you know, so that's very useful. B is a lot of solid options and stuff, which are, you know, just a notch below A, but you'd still be using these, and sometimes in combination with A. And then also some utility stuff like, you know, healing or rehabilitate or something. And then also the buffs and stuff are all very solid. They go along very nicely with the debuffs that are available too. And then this is like the cusp of when like the divines start becoming useful and things, and yeah, overall it's good solid skills. C is also useful skills, but a step below and more situational. Like you won't always click Precise Shot on every single enemy, right? Whereas you will often click Lion Dance in battles very regularly, but like only if the enemy is weak to bow or something. And some of these also just fall off. For example, Poison Axe is more useful early game, and then mid game, and then falls off, you know, toward the end game as you unlock the divines. And then the coverage elementals, which are solid but not amazing, but, you know, chip stuff. I still don't know about the Arms Master skills, but probably put them around here or something, where they're not like completely awful, but they're inferior to Lionheart, and because of that you lose value out of them. But, you know, whereas say Sixfold, it's good for scouting. And then where did I put Warlords? Yeah, Warlord Spear is also good for AoE attack and stuff. I might put, yeah, Conquerors probably with the others, probably like here or something along with them. I would probably put Warlords a little bit ahead, as well as Sixfold, but then the others are lower. Also, caveat that I don't remember Hunter's Bow, and I didn't use a ton of Bulwark, but I didn't remember it being particularly notable. The runes are all kind of bad because the damage is so much lower in this game, and then you have to kind of build around it too, which is kind of annoying. And other stuff here like falls off a lot sooner and stuff, and it's just a lot more situational, and like you'll almost very rarely, if ever, use them. or they're too defensive, too passive, or just don't do enough to buff what it buffs. And then E and F are just really bad skills. F is just like, why would you ever use it? And E is still like, why would you ever want to use it? Because, you know, you have options, you have so many better options, you know. But okay, feel free to leave any comments or thoughts if you disagree or agree. If you create your own list, feel free to let me know. And thanks for tuning in. I hope that was informative and enjoyable. So take care, have a nice day, and bye.